see that she's joining us live on StreamYard from Cape Town. Yesterday, the party was launched. There was a big launch happening on that side of the world. Good morning, Fazlin, and thank you so much for joining Salam Media.
Good morning and assalamu alaikum to all of your viewers.
We saw that big launch yesterday. Just in a nutshell, can you quickly just tell us about PMC? What's the party all about? We're going to the elections in about less than 3 months' time. Was this the perfect time to launch? Secondly, and are you guys not just a tad bit too late?
So I think let's clarify. Yesterday we had a press conference where we presented to the media specifically our leadership and our vision for the country. But in actual fact, the party launched with the people in December. And in December, we had over 5,000 people attend our launch in Philippi, in Cape Town. And so, what we've been doing over the last year is really doing a lot of community consultation, because what we've seen in the political space is that we have a lot of top down in terms of telling the people what their challenges are, rather than the people actually informing or empowering or being part of the political process. So we went through a whole lot of community consultations last year, which culminated in the launch in December. And then yesterday, what happened, essentially, we presented to the country the leadership of the organization and also our vision in terms of what we're looking to do come election. In terms of time frame, I think it's an absolute perfect time frame, because we're not necessarily driven by a top-down approach. We're driven by a bottom-up approach. We are coming, literally as the People's Movement for Change, coming from a consultative process with the people telling us, this is what we want you to push this agenda forward. And essentially in that space, that's what culminated in yesterday, but specifically in December.
And let's speak now a bit about election readiness. With the elections just around the corner, how prepared are you guys? And what strategies do you have in place for a successful electoral campaign?
So I think it's twofold. The president of the organization is Marius Fransman, who is an electioneering genius. If there's anybody both in the opposition as well as within the party that he was with historically that knows him, they know that one of his really good qualities around electioneering is around strategy and sort of moving in the communities. But our leadership is not just reflective of one man. It is reflective of an array of people that come from different organizations, whether it be political organizations or civil society organizations. And I think it's important, because I started off the conversation saying that we're people driven. So what we've done in our consultation last year is we've brought together other political parties. So we have formed a conglomerate of other small political parties that are not operating under our banner. I think that's the first thing. And so it becomes easier to mobilize in that way, because we're not starting off from a footprint that is completely blank. I think that's the first thing to clarify. In terms of our leadership, it is reflective of different sectors of society, different religious groups, different persuasions in an array of ways. And we've also got a team of experts that understand how to electioneer and specifically how to appeal to the people. So in terms of from a strategy perspective, I think the PMC is well set to become the second biggest party within the Western Cape at least, and then contest nationally on a very big scale. That is in the one space. But I think differently, we're being issue driven. The organization, as I said, is driven by the people in terms of what they need. It's very easy, and we've seen this in the past, where politicians develop policies in isolation from people. We are currently running a by-election in Grabouw, for example. And through a lot of the community consultations, when you talk to people, they'll tell you things like, we don't want an RDP house somewhere over there. We're happy with farm life, but we would like security of tenure, or we would like our pay increases and all of those things, and protection within the law within that context. So very often what politicians do, and this is where the PMC is different, but very often what politicians do is they have a predetermined list of what they think the people need. And this is where the PMC is different, is because we're saying we're going to the people and we're consulting with them in terms of what they need. And we combine that with the political experience of the people within the organization to actually come up with policies. So I think in terms of just relating to the community and being issue driven, I think that is one of the key things. But I also think specifically in the Western Cape, we are facing a very unique opportunity with what has happened geopolitically in Palestine. We have a specific community, which is the Muslim community, that is currently in limbo. A large portion of the Muslim community in the Western Cape specifically has voted historically the Democratic Alliance. Most of those people, through our community consultations, have said they don't want to transition to the ANC. So there's a limbo that has been created. And I think this is where the unique opportunity presents itself for the PMC, because we're such a broad umbrella that has brought together all the organizations and political parties and civil society groups and leaders from an array of formations. I think we're able to cross that line come election day and actually unseat the DA in the Western Cape.
You do mention, Mr. Marius Fransman, there being the president and leader of the party. I think South Africans are right now at a very precarious position where every leader, that comes, whether, from existing parties or starts a new party, is now, looked with a very, sensitive eye. They're basically put under a microscope. We know the controversy that surrounded Mr. Fransman. Was it the best decision, maybe, to have him as the face of the party and the president at such a critical point in South Africa, where our leaders are so much scrutinized, whether whatever they've done is alleged or they were found guilty of it? Just the controversy surrounding, a person and them now having to be, the frontman and the face of a political party. That is new in the South African political landscape.
So that's a really good question, and I'm really glad that you asked it, because it means that we're actually able to address perhaps what is an elephant in the room. So I'll start off, and I'll answer the question in two ways. I'll start off from my own personal experience, and then I think we'll delve into specifically the implications with regards to the elections. So, one of the things we always know is there is what the media says, there's what the people say, and then there's the truth, right? And we know that across the board. We've seen that play out in an array of different spaces. So as Fazlin Fransman Talib, and I'm not related to Marius, so just in terms of clarification, in terms of that, I've worked with him within the international relations space for the last probably 7 to 8 years, where we've worked with regards to BRICS countries, we've worked on the Palestinian issue and really been advocating for the global South. Marius definitely is somebody that is very passionate about, dealing with the oppressed and marginalized in the world and standing on that side. He comes from what is called the Guevarian or the Che Guevara school of thought in that way. And so has a very keen motivation in terms of that. But now, your question is critical, but your question requires us to slightly unpack the facts of the situation. Remember, in 2016 was the height of the Me Too movement. And so what happened was that any accusation leveled at anybody was being dealt with in a manner of belief first, and then you have to prove your innocence. So that is something that I think as a society we have grown from. And certainly as Fazlin, from a Muslim perspective and in the Muslim community, we know that, yes, justice must be served, but there has to be a process of proving, sort of that a particular crime was committed. But I just want to present for you the political landscape in which Marius Fransman existed in 2016. Remember, in 2015, Marius, as the head of the ANC in the Western Cape, hosted Hamas and specifically Khalid Michal. After that, there was a concerted campaign to remove him as president, as the head of the ANC in the Western Cape. It became a very aggressive space, specifically in that context, because remember, at the same time, just slightly earlier, he was the Deputy Minister of Foreign Relations or International Relations and Cooperation. Now, fast forward to 2016. If you go to very many of the media reports, you will see that there are a lot of corroborating evidence, and I don't want to go into the details about how this was a campaign to really remove somebody, from power, specifically because there was an alleged 10 million rand pushed into an internal ANC election campaign to unseat him. I mean, that is the narrative that was perpetuated at that particular point in time. So that being said, this is an important question, but also I think as the Muslim community and certainly as people in South Africa that stand on the truth and that stand on justice, we cannot be people that are swayed by somebody simply making an accusation, but then the systems of the law have proven that there's no weight to those accusations. And certainly as Fazlin, having worked with him for the last 8 years, specifically in the international space as a researcher, I can certainly vouch for the type of person that Marius is. So I personally don't feel that is a challenge or a problem, because we stand on truth and we stand on principle. And those people that understand that we stand on truth and principle, and specifically that we have a clear mandate in terms of what we want to achieve, then I feel like this becomes a home for you. But just on one last point, the PMC isn't necessarily Marius. Yesterday we had a press conference where we have leaders that have left, high-ranking leaders that have left the DA, that have left COPE, that left the PA, that left the ANC to come and join with the PMC, because we understand that the vision and the dream that we're trying to achieve through this vehicle is a lot bigger than the narrow focus of one particular individual. My own appointment, I think, as the deputy, president of the PMC, is testament to that. Is testament to the fact that we acknowledge that we have a diversity of people, that we have a diversity of skills, and that everybody has something to contribute to this process. So I do not think in any way that Marius is a liability. In actual fact, I think he's an asset. I think the fact that we launched our party in December with 5,000 strong, when we have other parties that just launched a few weeks ago that also had 5,000 strong, but they had to pump in hundreds of millions of rands to get 5,000 strong. I think that the fact that we launched in December with 5,000 strong with a very minimal budget says a lot to the testament, firstly, of Marius Fransman and the broader network that believes that he can take us over the line, specifically to unseat the Democratic Alliance in the Western Cape and hold the ANC accountable nationally, because nobody is going to be able to go into any sort of coalition with anybody. The PMC will have very clear demands when we go into any sort of coalition about what type of government we want. We want a clean government. We want a government without corruption. We want a government with more oversight. So when we go into coalition with whoever it may be, we are very clear that our demands are there. So just in one line, I think Marius is more of an asset than a liability. I think he'll say that himself. And I think that it is reflective of the fact that, with very minimal budget, we were able to pull together a launch of 5,000 people at minimum. And currently we're standing on a membership of 95,000, whereby we've grown that only in 3 months.
And the Western Cape is in a very precarious position right now. From the outside, it looks like a province that is filled with a lot of divisiveness. There's a lot of not agreeing on a lot of issues. There's a Cape independence campaign going around. There's also a very tense situation when it comes to Palestine activism in the province. Does the PMC see itself as a solution for this array of issues? And how do you plan to go about it, with the Western Cape being such a diverse, province with very opinionated people that strongly believe they should be going one way or the other, depending on basically color lines and religion lines that they might fall into?
And I think your question, again, your question is a very good question, because firstly, I think the PMC is a broad umbrella, right? And there's no single vehicle. If we literally look at the reality in the Western Cape. In the Western Cape, on the one side, you have communities that are well serviced, middle to upper class, and other communities that are not well serviced. I mean, just last night or yesterday, we had a child in primary school killed while on the school property or just in front of the school in Mitchell's Plain in Beacon Valley. And this is obviously something that's deeply problematic, but it speaks to the failure of the system to protect our children. She was caught in gang fire. I mean, we have to ask the question, consecutive governments, whether they were the DA or the ANC or wherever they were in the Western Cape specifically, what have they done to eradicate gangsterism out of our communities? And these are the common issues that unite all of us. What have they done to deal with backyard dwellers, for example, specifically on the one side in colored townships? And then we have in the likes of Khayelitsha, in the likes of Samora, Michelle, where there's a growing sort of Black population, and the housing is just not, like, housing development is not matching up with the size and the growth of the population. And so this speaks to the failure of both the provincial and national government to really deal with issues. If you look at on the one side, you have the community of Mitchell's Plain right here, the community of Sikalo on the other side, and there is real social and community tensions that are on racial lines. And what happens is a lot of the parties try to spark that type of racial tension because it gets people to vote in ethnic categories. Now, this is where the PMC is different, because we're saying we're going to be issue-based. And a lot of the issues that unite us are the same, right? We're going through poverty in the Western Cape en masse. We have gangsterism and substance abuse challenges in our community that is gripping our young people and really just robbing them of their dreams. We have sort of a crime problem across the board. These are the things that really affect the poor and working class and middle class communities of the Western Cape. And so in that way, I think the PMC comes in and says, we need to ask the question of what are the similarities, what are the issues that unite us, and how do we take it forward? Now, we know that the Western Cape is a contested space. It is a contested space. It's always been a contested space. That being said, we believe that the PMC is the only vehicle that can really challenge the DA and hold them accountable, and I'll explain why. The ANC, unfortunately, in the Western Cape has become completely irrelevant. And I say this as somebody that comes from a progressive ANC background. They've become irrelevant in the ability to hold the DA accountable. In terms of the other political parties, Al Jamaa on their side, they have too narrow a focus, unfortunately, to build a broad consensus to hold the DA accountable. We have the NCC, which is the other party that is contesting, has a very, very narrow focus within the colored community, and it's really just mostly in the metro. So even for them, in terms of our projections, they're not really going to be a major player in terms of holding the DA accountable. Now, if you bring it to the PMC, the PMC has a broad base. We have brought together the First Nation community. So we're talking here about the Khoi, the San, and the Busman, in terms of, those that are descendants, from the First Nation. And so a lot of the formation, the leadership structures, the Griquas, the Namas, they've all come together, and we have a number of them serving in key, strategic positions from their leadership within the PMC. I think that's the first thing. I think the second thing, we know that in Cape Town, the DA has been clamping down on pro-Palestinian positioning, and even right now, the position that they're taking on the Palestinian football match that is scheduled to take place, we know that is an overt attempt to try and capture the Muslim vote. But we also know that our Muslims know that the DA has not called for a ceasefire in general, that the DA has not condemned Israel on the genocide, that their leaders have met with Israeli leaders in the past. We know exactly what their position is. So it's no surprise to any conscientious person in the Western Cape when, one, they paint over murals where the community is really just trying to beautify their spaces on the one side, and on the other side saying, we feel for children and women and men and civilians dying in Palestine, and we want to show our humanity, and the DA comes and they paint over that. Meanwhile, they leave gang signs on the other side. So we know that from the Muslim community, there's going to be a major constituency that is going to support the PMC. We know that from the First Nation community, there's a major sector that is going to support the PMC. And the PMC is not just about the Muslims and the First Nation. We have a very big constituency of African Black people out of the townships. We have an informal settlement sort of desk where we're focusing on informal settlements and informal traders. The Secretary General of the PMC is the Secretary General of Cadeta in the Western Cape. So we have a broad appeal in terms of the people that we're bringing together, and we are confident. I think the challenge is we're trying to tell people we have this broad appeal because we know what is happening on the ground. We know the members we've signed up. We know how our ground forces are moving every day, and we know that. And I think yesterday was an opportunity for us to show the rest of the country what we've been doing over the last 3 months.
All right. I think you said a mouthful there, but we're going to leave it there for now. Salam Media will be keeping a close eye on the PMC. Wishing you guys all the best leading up to the 2024 general elections. Thank you so much for joining us, Fazan, and I will catch up soon.
Thank you so much, and assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Walaikum salam. That was the second deputy president of the People's Movement for Change, the PMC, led by former Western Cape leader and former deputy minister of international relations and cooperation, Mr. Marius Fransman. The PMC there, telling us what people should expect should they be in government, particularly in the Western Cape as we lead up to the 2024 general elections. So if the PMC speaks your language, if they're talking to you, and maybe you consider them as an alternative, if you're in the Western Cape, to maybe the Democratic Alliance or Al Jamaa, well, you've heard it for yourself. They say they offer an alternative to the two parties, and they'll be bringing something different. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be speaking to the Senior Training Coordinator of Terrorism and Explosive-Related Incidences at the Transnational Threats and International Crimes Program at the Institute for Security Studies. Mr. Willem Els will be talking about a significant surge in both people in trade and movement in South Africa's borders in the past festive season, and what that brings in terms of challenges. We know that our borders are very porous. There's a lot being said about the amount of crime and illegal exchange of goods and services and people and human trafficking that's happening in and around our border. So we'll be tackling that issue a bit with Willem Els. So going to take a quick break. You're still tuned in to Salam Media.